On today's episode of the Good Random Podcast, I will be chatting with professional Brawl Stars coach, pro player of past years, and content creator for Tribe Gaming, none other than my good friend and homie, Tribe Cori. We're going to be talking about how his team barely clutched up to make it to the World Finals for 2023, how Tribe players even managed to meet each other after apparently being dropped in the olden days, and the life of Cori being a lobster fisherman, content creator, and coach. That's insane. Still insane. Absolutely amazing interview. Banger of an episode. Let's get right into it. Welcome to the Good Randoms Podcast, where we talk all things Brawl Stars, whether you're a casual player getting a few minutes in a day or a hardcore esports junkie like myself. This is the perfect place to watch or listen. I am your host, Kenny Barlow. As many of you know me, it is Kenny Casts. Some of you knew me in the Kung Fu Kenny _32 days, and maybe even a few of you know me as XTiger34. Been a long time coming for this podcast, though. If you don't know me or you're unfamiliar with me, first time seeing me, I've been a BSC caster for 2 years now. I have a lot of fun playing the game too. I've been casually playing it pretty hardcore, or at least a lot more for the past 3 years. The first couple of years I play it off and on, but I've been pretty dedicated to Brawl Stars for a hot second now, and it's just something that I love. And now that the BSC season is kind of wrapped up, at least its regular season, I've had a little bit more time to put towards a project like this that I've wanted to do for a hot second now. And just a great community, a lot of really interesting people. I plan on having a ton of great guests, just like the one we do today. Cori is awesome, great interview, 10 out of 10 recommend listening to it. But obviously this is only episode 1. I plan to have a bunch of different topics, guests, segments. I mean, there is a ton going down in Brawl Stars in general, whether you're an esport fan, LCQ right around the corner, or if you're just a Brawl Stars player fan, whether you're a hardcore player or just a casual player, there are a ton of cool stuff, including hypercharges, Siege coming back, a new season literally dropping next week. So there's always something going on in Brawl Stars, and this is going to be the place we talk about it. As a fan of the game, as a fan of the esport, somebody who works in the esport, going to be trying to give you all some kind of inside scoop on what's going on, some talk with players that you don't normally get to have, some content creators that maybe you don't get to see what life is behind their videos and things like that. So I think this is going to be a really cool opportunity to do that. If you're just now running into me, I really appreciate if you can consider subscribing, letting me know what guests you guys would like to see in the future. But yeah, without further ado, let's get into our very first interview. All right, we are welcoming on a super special guest, none other than Tribe Cori. I'm very excited to have you on, brother. Obviously, this is the first podcast interview I've ever done for Brawl Stars. First podcast interview, period, I guess. But you seem like a no-brainer to bring on really early on. Obviously, I know you a little better than a lot of the people in Brawl. You're one of the people I've definitely been closer with, I'd say. We've gamed off and on in between. And of course, I go to you along with some of these other pro players for just about any question I have oriented towards Brawl Stars or drafts or whatever it have during the season. So I really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. Anytime.
Yeah, so obviously I think an easy place to start too, and another reason, obviously the story of Tribe Gaming this year has been absolutely insane. What a roller coaster of a season. I mean, as somebody who had no stakes in NA East, I guess as you can say, you're living it every month, the roller coaster ride, the wins, the losses. Heck, I mean, halfway through the season, you guys got second in Masters. I'm sure that was a huge confidence boost, and then coming home just to some still really good competition, I'm sure was a lot. So walk me through that. I mean, winning this last month had to have been absolutely insane and just a great feeling.
Yeah, I mean, I think you nailed it on the head. A roller coaster of a year for us is something we were not familiar with. Even for the last couple of years, we've been pretty comfortable going into Worlds, but this is the first time we've been really put to the test and do or die moment for a long time throughout our careers. And I think that actually plays a little bit of a part into why we were in that situation. Once you're at the top for a decent amount of time, you tend to get comfortable. And I think that is one of the main factors that we had going on this year. We weren't too comfortable, but you could still see that none of us wanted to fully grind like we used to do back in the day. And there was a little bit of hesitation there, but when it comes down to the wire, we do put in the time like we had to before this last month. But I mean, yeah, just not the wins we wanted. Honestly, we were expecting to do a lot better. I think that there was a few things that we made mistakes throughout the year. Draft was an issue at one point, then we kind of figured out the draft, but then even with our drafts, our decision making was pretty poor later on in the year. And when you're facing against the top teams, it's everything combined needs to be on play, right? The drafts need to be good. Then you also need to have a game plan with your draft. And if we don't, well, we're still going to lose. And I think that was one of the biggest issues. I think CMG was both good at draft, both good at like, adapting during the sets, and they caught us off guard a lot of the time. And so they made a really good opponent this year for us.
I think it's funny that you bring that up because a lot of people at home, especially people that may not be as familiar with Brawl Stars, or maybe they're just getting into it, or they don't watch the esport as much as they play it, it blows my mind how much depth there truly is to this game. Like, I think at its surface, people look at this and it's just like, you take two thumbs and play it on your phone. Like, how hard can it really be? But, I was literally grinding my Gale Mastery yesterday, and the people I'd play against or randomly match up into a pro, or, watching you guys monthly, and then you go on and talk about, well, now it's not just mechanics, it's how do we adapt in the middle of a set, keep the mental up, how do we not stay complacent, how do we draft well, how do we strategize well, how do we play this certain opponent. There's so much that goes into it. So that's kind of wild that I think just like how something so simple at the surface level can also be so complicated and intricate. And I think that's one of the reasons I really love this game and just strategy in general, man. And I think you nailed it on the head too. I mean, you guys certainly came out swinging in that final month. It was kind of wild to think about the time this year that Tribe Gaming as an organization, but especially the NA group of you guys that have been together for a hot second now, and a lot of Brawl Esports history, like there was a real chance that you guys wouldn't make Worlds, and a real chance that LCQ wasn't in the picture. I mean, talk about a absolute swing there. I mean, it's wild to think about that was a world that we could have lived in.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even think our team realized that, like, yes, we realized that was a world that could happen, but at the same time, it was like, we didn't believe it ourselves. I don't even think, like, we just knew that, we had what it takes to make Worlds and that we should probably make Worlds, but like, we just didn't believe that there was a possibility that we didn't make either. But I will say though, going into the last month, surprisingly, like usually the nerves would be high. I think that was the best we felt all year. I think that everybody was like, everybody was motivated. We were all pushing each other, and everyone was playing good. Like, I mean, mechanically wise, I think we were all at our peaks. I think gameplay wise and strategy wise, we were like making big moves and really like kind of shifting the meta. Honestly, I felt like towards the last month we were the ones like being the pioneers of the meta, where sometimes we were kind of chasing the meta. And so, I mean, I don't want to take full credit. There's obviously a little bit from every team that scrims in NA that we see some things from here, see some things from there, but like we were also bringing out things that people were like, what are they doing? But it ended up being really, really strong. So but yeah, it was a very, very interesting year for us.
Yeah, I mean, hand up. If you could see me, I'm throwing a hand up right now. But honestly, there was one point I think last month. I think it was Gym Grab, maybe Double Swoosh, and you even DM'd me after the fact and said something along the lines of, "Did you like that Janet pick?" And on broadcast, I think you used it in your video too, which obviously shout out to you and your YouTube channel. I'll have it down in the description too. But I was watching the video, and there was a point where Reddy, I think, somewhat quote, he said, quote, "Janet is a brawler." Like, that was all he had to say on seeing the Janet. And it was just random things like that, but rest assured it worked. I mean, you've been with these guys for a hot second. You said you're kind of trying some new things out that worked really well towards the end there. How far does that trust go? Like, what's it like with Zoulan, Ezlivi, and Tyrant on the other end? Like, were they questioning the call? Were they cool with it? Were they, woo, let's do it? Or were they not about it, but just went with coach's call?
I mean, they were definitely questioning it. I know for a fact that everyone was like, are you sure about Janet? And to answer your question about trust, I will say this is another issue that we had throughout the year, is that the boys trust me 100%, but also there was times where I wasn't confident enough and I would put hesitation in my voice. And so therefore, like, the boys were always like, I wonder if that's the right play. And sometimes we wouldn't pull through with what we were deciding to do. And that's where we had a lot of issues throughout the year. But towards the end, that was something that I got over personally as a coach, that I was just like, you know what, like, why don't I just stick with my gut? Usually I'm like, no, not to toot my own horn, but like, I'm the one watching these guys. Like, they're in the game. I know what's happening. I know what should be done. And so I just got to stick with my gut, tell the boys what I think. And at the end of the last month, that's what I said. I was like, I think Janet here. And they were like, really? Like, there was another couple brawlers they mentioned. And I was like, no, guys, like, do you trust me? Like, this is such a good Janet game. And like, I knew in my head, but they started making me doubt. Don't get me wrong. They started to get me to doubt my own pick. But I was like, guys, I know Janet will work here. And I just said, lock it in. Like, I guarantee this will work. And I mean, it just worked honestly perfection. Like there was honestly nothing they could have done the last set. I don't think, unless like we brutally messed up. But yeah, the boys trust me. But yeah,
I mean, I'm sure part of that too is just being alongside them for a long time. Obviously, you know, you've competed for a really long time, whether that be coach or pro player. And a lot of that has been with Zoulan, Tyrant, you know, now 2 years with Ezlivi. I mean, what's it like playing with the same group of guys being represented by mostly the same organization as well? I mean, I'm sure that has to add like a sense of comfortability and be a really cool thing. That's one thing I kind of miss about competing with like high school sports, for example. Like I decided not to walk on or anything in college. And it was like, I kind of missed that team aspect. Like I was playing team PL the other day versus solo PL on stream, and I had 20 times more fun just because it feels better getting a win alongside somebody, especially people that you're close with or friends with or whatever, than it is just for me to like grind the solo PL, not to mention the randoms just in general. But outside of that, it's got to be a good feeling.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I've been with these guys for, I don't know, 4 years maybe. I actually don't know how long, but I do know that last year in World Finals, there was literally a statistic or a questionnaire. It was like, which team has been together the most in World Finals? And we were that team last year. So this is just adding one more year to the same roster, which is kind of crazy to me to even think about. Like, I've been with these guys since 2020. I mean, basically, you know, Ezlivi joined as well, but it's just comfort, man. Like, we've been doing the same thing for the past 4 years. Like we know each other like inside and out. You know, we're good friends at this point. Like we're really, really good friends. And so like we're pretty comfortable talking it out, and we've had our ups and downs as teams, but we know how to figure it out at this point, which is kind of nice. And like, you know, with new players and new teams, there's always new problems. And so luckily we don't really have that issue anymore, and we can kind of figure it out. I'm not going to say we don't have problems. We had our fair share of problems this year, but like like I said, we can work it out now that we're really good friends, and it's just really comforting. That's what I'm going to say.
How did you all stumble into each other? I mean, Brawl Stars obviously has been around for a little bit here, but the esports scene has its own little niche. You know, people find people to play ladder with and things like that. But obviously, like you said, it's been since around 2020. How did you stumble into Tyrant and Zoulan? Did you just end up facing them in ladder one time? You're like, dang, that guy was good. I'm inviting that guy back. Like, how does that work out, especially in the early days?
Yeah, I mean, way back when we were, so it started with me, Super Sai, and we were looking for a teammate, and we were like, you know, Tyrant got dropped by SSG at the time, and we're like, man, this guy's really good. Like, honestly, not sure why he got dropped. Let's pick him up. Come to find out, there was reasons why he got dropped, because he was very inconsistent, like would just disappear during scrims and tournaments, family things. But you know, he got so much better at it throughout time. Like he didn't even show up to the first LAN event. I don't know if you remember that, but our first ever LAN event that we qualified for a team, he did not show up because of the same issue. No. And so it's like, we can see why he kind of got dropped, but he was one of the he was definitely, I would say, probably the best player at the time in North America. So it's like, how do you drop the best player? You got to give him another shot, you know? So that's how we met Tyrant. How I met Zoulan was, we played against Zoulan a couple times in tournaments, and I remember this all happened around the same time. When we were about to fly to our first LAN event, we knew that we had Tyrant that was like iffy whether he was going to show up or not. And then Super Sai needed a visa, so it was like very unsure if Super Sai was going to be able to go. And then our other teammate had exams or something, so he wasn't going to go. And at this point, it was like, all right, I'm the only one going. We need somebody else to make sure that's coming with me. And that's when I DM'd Zoulan. I was like, hey, man, like, crazy question for you. Like, would you just come to Poland with us? First time ever. God. And he was like, yeah, man. And then that's how we met Zoulan, and then we stuck with that team forever. And then, yeah, like we all got dropped from somewhere, and then we just kind of like formed a team together. So it was pretty crazy.
That's actually insane. Like I'm imagining just a even younger Zoulan just sitting there grinding his favorite video game and then getting a random Discord message or in-game message, or however that even works. You want to come to Poland, bro? Like that is a crazy thing. I'm assuming it's the same studio that they're going to be doing LCQ here soon too, which is a super nice thing. Like I imagine that was a huge deal for you guys, for Zoulan especially at that time too. And now, I mean, all of you are arguably some of the best to ever do it, one of the best franchises to ever do it too, which is wild to think that, you know, I watched Tyrant I've watched him for a long time, obviously, especially way back then. I think he was just that guy. I mean, it's unbelievable. And it's crazy to think too that he was that guy, and on top of that, like, you didn't know if he was going to show. So the fact that y'all have stuck together for 4 years after working that out early on, after I'm sure he saw more of a future with the game too, because I think it's gotten a little easier for justifying with the public, you know, that esports is a real career, that it's a real thing, that it's fun to play a video game, but if you can make money off it and sustain yourself, like, why the heck not, right? And I'm sure that's a fight, and something that I've listened to even in interviews with him, like outside BSC and stuff like that. That's a real thing. Like, I know from my family, from other people, like it's definitely interesting always telling them, you know, what you do for a living. I mean, obviously I have a day job as well, but you know, when friends ask me like, how's it going? Or like, what have you done recently? And I'm like, yeah, I like just got back from Poland, or I got back from San Diego to cast like a video game. They're like, what? They're like, that's crazy. Yeah. But if I'd said that like 10 years ago, I feel like the reaction would be so different. I mean, is it like common amongst your like friend group or like people in your town? Cause I think you live in a little bit smaller of a town, if I remember right. Like, are you the esport guy, or is it like Corey's the lobster fisherman, like just another dude in the town?
Nah, man, I'm the esports guy in my town. It's actually unreal how many. I bet you, like, I'm gonna say 90% of the conversation starters now, when someone comes up to talk to me, they're like, "Where have you been traveling to? You know, how's the gaming life?" Like, everybody knows about the gaming world where I'm from, or at least they don't know about the gaming world. They know that I'm a pro gamer, and they're just like, it doesn't make any sense, but this guy travels the world, and like traveling around where I live is not common. Like, we live very far from an airport, not very common. So everyone's like, oh my God, this guy's traveling all across the world. You know, it's pretty cool stuff. So that's the conversation starter for the most part. And I try to like lean away from it because they don't understand. But yeah, it's usually a long conversation.
I get that for sure. Like, especially as somebody who's been not in as long as you have, but in the brawl scene at least specifically for a couple years now doing BSC. It's one of those things where, especially at first, it was like people who loved me were happy for me, but they were not happy for me because they understood what I was doing. They were just kind of happy I was happy. It is like one of those things that's really hard to explain. Like, whenever somebody asks me like what I do, or like I try and describe it, I'm like, it's kind of like watching sports, but it's like I'm doing that, like what they do on Sunday for football, except like for a video game. And they're like, oh, okay. And it's just like, I've had like my parents watch, I've had friends watch, and like some of them consistently watch or like have dabbled in Brawl Stars a little bit, so they understand it. But like my parents are just like those stereotypical parents that are like, woo, go Kenny, woo. But they have like no, like when Gym Grab or Heist comes up, like at least with Brawl Ball, it's like, oh, soccer ball, like they're playing soccer. But like when some of these more specialty game modes like Bounty or Knockout come out and they have no experience being gamers, like I do not come from a parenthood of gamers. They're like, I don't know what's going on, but he's doing great. Yeah. It's always so interesting that people just, you know, that's so interesting that they like identify that with you, and they have no true idea like what it even entails. Yeah, I think it's just it's so funny, but it's nice to have people that, you know, it's nice that you have that as your identity. I would say most of my at least close friends at this point, I mean, all of them know like what I do and things like that. But that's kind of funny to think that like you're, you know, obviously lobster fishing part-time, content creating part-time, coaching part-time, like what a heck of a life. What is like lobster fishing on top of coaching on top of content creation like how busy is your schedule?
Man, it depends on the day, but some days I feel like I have no time. Like, there's not enough time in the day to do everything. And I will say, like, there's always something that's suffering. One of those aspects of my life is suffering, whether it's like social life, YouTube, or a lot of the time it used to be YouTube. I would like, you know, I'd take breaks from YouTube here and there, just so that way I was like, you know, fully engaged in, you know, like esports or fishing or whatever the case may be. I will say, as I went to a coaching position, a little less stressful, because I don't have to continuously play the game myself a ton, but I still have to scrim. So it's like I don't actually gain that much time, but the couple excuse me, a couple extra hours that I gain, it's kind of nice to like focus that towards YouTube. And now I've like surrounded myself by a great team on YouTube, and it makes my life so much easier. But it's not easy, like especially during fishing season. So like towards November is going to be absolutely brutal. It is every single year. I get back from World Finals the day fishing starts, so I'll be flying home, probably going straight to the lobster boat if the season's not delayed, and then sailing out and fishing for like a month straight, which is honestly terrible, because then I don't have time to do YouTube unless there's like a day off or something. But I mean, I just get home at like 7, 8 o'clock. I'm exhausted, and Usually I will end up scrimming because that's what you got to do. Or if I don't scrim, we don't have scrims, I'll probably put that time to YouTube and just repeat. And it gets really, really tiring, but somehow I manage. So it kind of works out.
That sounds like a lot. I mean, I won't lie. Like, as somebody who's in a similar boat too, with like casting plus, the day job as well. Like that is a lot. And I know that my job is at a desk. Lobster fishing is definitely not. So like when you wake up, like what time do you wake up? Like you said, it's definitely a grind day in and day out, and it's a pretty filled day. Like, what time are you out on the water? Like what's the average day of fishing season look like for Cori?
Yeah. So usually, like a typical fishing day is like you wake up at 3 a.m. and you eat your breakfast. You drive to the boat and you fish for I don't know how many hours. But it's like a 12-hour day, and then yeah, it's kind of brutal. Usually I get home around like 5, 6, 7 o'clock. It kind of depends, but. And then usually, not always. If I'm lucky, like the boys will be like, "All right, you can take the night off," because I'll just message. I'm like, "I'm so tired, I can't do it tonight." But like sometimes they'll be like, "All right, we got scrims tournament coming up," so it's like, okay, our scrims are like 7 and then 9 usually, or maybe I said that wrong. 7, 9, I think that's right. And then so like you scrim, and then it's like midnight my time, and I'll go to bed, and then. Sometimes I'll go fishing the very next day, but if I'm lucky, I have a day off, and then that day off is just like rest. This is I can't do anything. I'm too tired, and I'll just scrim at night, and I'll try to rest as much as possible to get ready for the next fishing day. So it is a grind.
Oh, that I'm literally in pain. Like I can't even fathom waking up at 3 a.m. on like a daily basis. That sounds insane to me. Like the amount of sleep that I would be lacking is unbelievable. So I have mad respect for the fact that you can somehow balance all of that and be a top tier coach and team in North America on top of, providing for yourself, your family, however lobster fishing works there. And then I don't know, just surviving. I mean, my gosh, dude, is it a dangerous job? Like, tell me about the job itself. Like, I feel like I am, I come from like an ag background, like dad farmer, like grandparents still have a farm. Like I've done that side of things. Like, I've seen hay bales, I've seen livestock, but like, what is it like on the water? Like out in the middle, I'm assuming the ocean, just like trying to get your hands on some lobsters. Like, is it a lot? I'm assuming it's a ton of manual labor.
Yeah, it's definitely physically demanding. It's probably one of the most physically demanding jobs around. But as for the dangerous level, it is definitely up there in the most dangerous jobs in the world. Like the fishing industry itself is like 1, 2, 3. I don't know which one it is, but like most dangerous jobs in the world. Luckily, I will say that it's not as crazy as like you see Deadliest Catch or something like that, where they're getting hit by waves and the waves like swarm the boat. I mean, we're a little bit smarter than that. Like we don't go in the crazy weather, and so it's kind of nice that way. But I mean, some boat, it just depends on the boat that you're on. Luckily, my boat is not super hungry to go make like money in the most dangerous weather. So we go in. I mean, we go in bad weather sometimes, but not as crazy as those guys.
Yeah.
And, I don't know. The risk is always there that you could go overboard. You hit a wave, go overboard. A rope wraps around your foot, and you'll get hauled. And I mean, the scary thing is like there might not be anything you can do. You get hauled to the bottom of the ocean, it could be over, and that's something that I used to think about a lot, not so much anymore, but it is still very scary to think about.
Yeah, I'm good on that. Like that, like that is a tough job, man. I can't imagine. I think I just, I already had some pretty big respect for you, obviously. I mean, I go to you for a bajillion different Brawl Stars questions related to drafts and things like that. Like, definitely a big part of why I feel like I have the knowledge I do on broadcast that I do. But I can't imagine like doing that on top of a very physically demanding job that is also quite dangerous. Like I mean, kudos, brother. That is a crazy schedule and a crazy life to live.
Thanks, man. It means a lot.
Yeah. I mean, on top of that, some cool YouTube stuff along the way too. I mean, I've been following your channel for a hot second now too. And you put out some very unique stuff. Like I think especially for a player of your caliber, like, I think it's easy to sometimes like fall into the, just like grinding the power league trap. Obviously it's a lot of fun too. It's just like a lot of people do it, but I love that you kind of come up with some of these unique and kind of more interesting ideas in the sense that like a lot of the stuff you do, I haven't seen before. Like, what do you do for inspiration for stuff like that? Like, where does that come from? Is it just something you're playing the game every day and it just pops in your brain, or do you have like a team behind you? Like, how does the YouTube side of things work?
Yeah, I mean, the YouTube side has been completely different for the past like whatever how long I've been doing it. Like my whole kind of like thought process is like, all right, I got to come up with an idea that's someone wants to watch. I used to just like come up with some fun ideas and some people would watch them. Now it's like I really focus in on the idea and make a story behind it before I even start recording. It's like, all right, what is a banger idea? Or sometimes I just push myself to the limit. I'm just like, let's try this random challenge, and I'm not going to stop until I do it. Like that's kind of what I've been going with recently. And it's definitely draining, but it actually makes for some pretty cool videos. And I've just totally like revamped everything. I have 2 editors now who I love working with personally, and they're both do their specialties. Like one of them just kind of like cuts my video and like kind of like fits the story, and the other one adds all the cool effects and stuff like that. Wow. And then I write like a script. I go through, I don't know, hours and hours of footage, try to find the best moments, try to make a story about it. And it's quite the process, but honestly, I'm super happy with the growth that I've had and like the recent success that I had, and I'm hoping that I can just keep continuing to get better and better, and hopefully make a name for myself as a solid YouTuber.
Heck yeah, dude. I mean, it definitely shows too. I think that's one thing that a lot of people just don't see on the other end, and they maybe will never understand unless they try doing themselves. Like, it is a long process. Like, storytelling is a big thing, especially with YouTube videos, and a lot of people won't even realize it when they're consuming it or watching it, but there's so much demand that goes in behind the scenes. Like, being a YouTuber is such a common thing. Like, when I want to grow up, I want to be a creator, but it's honestly, once you're behind the scenes, once you're doing a good job at it, I feel like too, it is such a different process. It's honestly a really, really impressive just to do all the things you do on top of that. And it's awesome to hear you have a team behind you too. I mean, a lot of this stuff, like I said, it's very unique compared to a lot of Brawl Stars content out there. I think it's a reason that you've been so successful. And I mean, my goodness, like at some point, got to get a code Cori in there. Like, I'm about to drop some mad coinage on that, but hopefully we get some more of those soon too. We would love to see you there for sure. I mean, it is really, really cool stuff to see. Definitely check out Cori's YouTube channel if you haven't at home. But Cori, I have one last question before we let you go. In terms of traveling, you're going to Sweden now. They have made it public. Are you excited to go to Sweden? Have you been to Sweden? You said you traveled all across. Are you excited for Sweden? And then follow up, what's the coolest place you've been to for Brawl Stars?
So answer the first part of the question, I love Sweden. We've been there for MSI. It's the same city. Yeah. It's the same thing, and I honestly can't wait. It was probably one of my top 3 trips ever. So I'm super excited to go back. And one of the best places I've ever been has to be hands down Japan. I mean, like I don't know how you could say otherwise. I mean, it's just everything's different. The culture's different, and the people are so nice, and like just an experience that I never thought I'd be able to ever have through Brawl Stars. And so I'm super grateful for all these opportunities, to be honest. And again, just I can't wait for Sweden. Can't wait to hopefully have a good performance at Worlds. I know we can do it. It's just gotta show up on game day, and that's how it always is.
Yeah, I mean, I always say it. I think the most common questions like I get asked outside of like the World Finals questions I get all the time. Like, who do you think is going to win Worlds? Who do you think is going to win LCQ? And I'm like, man, like, there's no easy ones. Like, there are no freebies in this world. We have a team that won, you guys got second following 2 months. Like, we have some teams pop off in NA East, CMG, R7. Like, we had Totem who won Masters who, hadn't even gotten a monthly finals, grand finals victory to that point. They didn't even make season 3 finals or even the regular season. Like, Brawl Stars is a tough game, man, but I have no doubt that you all will show up on game day. I am very excited to watch, of course, and obviously LCQ coming up too. You guys have the luxury of just being sitting back at home, watching from the couch, just seeing how the competition unfolds and who will be those extra 4 teams to play against you all. But obviously, best of luck there. Very excited to see what you all do. Anything you want to shout out before I let you go? I will obviously have everything in the description for the people at home that want to see it, that want to follow you. If they're somehow following me and not you, mistake. You should be doing both. Cori is awesome. But yeah, anything you want to shout out or anything you're working on coming up soon?
I mean, definitely just keep, if you watch my YouTube, just keep watching because hopefully I'll have some pretty awesome content for you guys. Other than that, just shout out to my teammates and then shout out to you, Kenny, for having me on. And if you guys are not subscribed to Kenny, I don't know what you're doing. So just hit that button right now. But yeah.
Well, I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much. And you are officially our first ever guest on the Good Random podcast. So thank you for that. Very happy to have you on. And we'll have to get some games in soon, brother.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right, what an interview. Shout out to Corey for being the first ever guest on the Good Random podcast. And of course, he made a great interview. He's always been really good to me over the past couple of years, appreciating him, adding me in game super early on to spectate for monthly qualifiers, inviting me to be part of YouTube videos, all that jazz. Been super cool. One of the people I've actually gotten to meet in person too. So great dude. Definitely follow him if you haven't already. And if you made it this far and you enjoyed the episode, no matter if it's on YouTube or you're listening, however you're doing it, please consider leaving a comment, following the podcast, or subscribing depending on what platform you're on. I'm new to the podcast game, but obviously I love Brawl Stars, getting to talk about it, and I think this is going to be some cool content that I get to show some of you guys, the kind of behind the scenes of players' lives, of what went down during the year, your favorite creators, all of that jazz. So a lot of cool stuff on the way as well. If you want to help the show grow, the best, easiest, and most free way to do so is if you're on YouTube, like the video, or if you're listening, leave that 5-star review. It'd be super appreciated. And comment down below the guests you'd love to see in the future, ideas you have for the show. I'm cooking up a lot of things, but obviously we are super early on into the podcast itself. Plan on releasing a few episodes a month with a little bit different each time in terms of just the guests that are on, what we're talking about. Obviously, there's a lot of current events we'll cover, such as LCQ, new seasons, and things like that in the future, but it would mean a lot. Simple way to really help me get some live criticism from the people listening. I want to make this the best show for you guys as much as possible and get a little better with each episode too. So turn on those bells, be on the lookout for some future episodes because obviously this is a huge couple months here for Brawl Stars in general. Until then though, happy brawling and we'll see you in the next one.